opinions expressed on the Jay Thomas Show are the opinions of the host, participating callers, and/or listener emails, texts, and/or letters, and are not necessarily the opinions of WDAY or Forum Communications. WDAY 970 AM and 93.1 FM invites you to make your opinion known. We pride ourselves on exploring all viewpoints on any topic.
Do you know who I am? I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal. People know me.
I'm very happy for you.
Well, let's get this thing rolling in the Jay Thomas Show on a Monday afternoon. Well, we get ready for some weather to possibly roll through the area. Oh, the latest John Wheeler and his crew, man, in the Storm Tracker Weather Center. All right, here are the numbers. 293-9000, toll-free 1-888-970-9329. Email talk at WDAY.com. Rob Port, how you doing on a Monday, buddy?
I am doing good.
I see we find out here, sounds like within a couple days, Minnesota Governor Walz will make a decision on whether or not to do mandatory masking in Minnesota.
That's going to be interesting.
And that is going to be because you have, greater Minnesota. They've been upset through basically this whole Corona thing, Rob, because they feel like, outstate greater Minnesota it's a lot different than the Twin Cities.
Yeah.
And you have like Lake of the Woods County. They say, look, this one size fits all on a mandate for masks. This just doesn't fly. Lake of the Woods County, it's the only one in the state where there has yet to be one confirmed case of COVID-19 as of Friday afternoon.
Yeah. Well, I think also the problem has always been, and this really goes for any area of public policy, you do the best when you inspire people to make the choice for themselves. Mm-hmm. If you get to the point where you're having to and maybe we're already there, and maybe this ship has already sailed, but if you get to the point where you're trying to force people to do something like this, you're losing.
I said that last week. Yep.
And it's so difficult because you want people to choose to wear masks because it makes sense to do so wherever they're at, but you've got to inspire them to do it. I mean, we don't have, believe me, you look at the protests we just went through with the cops, their hands are full, right? So enforcing this is going to fall down where? We're going to call cops, try to get them out to enforce the mask thing. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how you do it. I mean,
the mask thing has become political too. No surprise.
It really has. It really has. I mean, this we live in an era that's obsessed with virtue signaling, right? There are so many people out there that they just can't worry about themselves. They gotta play gotcha with their neighbors.
Yep.
And it's a frustrating time.
And we've got school starting. You and I are going to talk about that. School. What are we going to do with the schools? The mask thing is going to be interesting. I'm not a mask guy. I mean, I've been very vocal about that. I won't mask shame anybody. I mean, if you choose to wear a mask, that is your choice. I will not do it. I'm not buying into it.
I haven't been wearing one, but I think I'm going to order some for the family.
I've got some in my truck just in case I go somewhere and I'm going to have to wear one. I really don't want to, but if I have to, I got no choice. Then I'm gonna have to throw it on. So I've got those I'm pretty sure the blue paper ones.
I'm pretty sure to get a haircut, I'm gonna have to wear one.
Yeah, I think. Actually, I think you are now. As of today, all Menards in the entire country, you need a mask to go into Menards. They will not let you without one. So that took effect today, and I'm a Menards guy. So we'll see what happens there. All right, Rob. You got a 12-year-old.
Yes.
You got to deal with the distance learning. We got school coming up in about a month, a little over a month. It starts here in North Dakota, basically, a month and a couple weeks. And, I don't think a lot of these schools have come out. I don't think any schools have come out with plans yet. I had the Fargo School Board president, Robin Nelson, Fargo Schools. I had her on last week, talked to her about, what's going on at the schools. I also had Kirsten Baszler on it. It sounds like basically North Dakota, and hang on, calls with you in a second, Cameron, you be first. It sounds like Well, that sounds like it's going to happen. It's going to be left up to each individual local school district.
Yeah. And I've heard, I know Bismarck Public Schools has come out and said they're basically waiting on guidance from the governor. And to that end, Governor Burgum, it sounds like he's going to be addressing this
tomorrow
at his news conference tomorrow.
So,
we should hopefully be getting some guidance. But really, I think even you were just saying, like in Minnesota with the mask situation, outstate Minnesota is a much different thing than the Twin Cities areas.
Yeah.
I think it's got to be the same here in North Dakota. I think they need to leave it up to the local school boards to decide how they want to handle this. Now, maybe set some statewide standards or some guidelines, but beyond that, there are still counties in North Dakota that haven't seen a single case of coronavirus.
That's right.
So not everything. I mean, Fargo Public Schools is going to have very different needs than a public school in Tioga.
Yeah.
These are just different areas, different needs, different parts of the state. So I hope that's what it is. I do think, though, and this was the point of my column, it's gotten a lot of reaction, including somebody's on Facebook just before I came on the show was calling me a domestic terrorist.
Hold on before you dive into that. Let me grab Cameron here because I think he wants to talk about the mask. Then we can dive into your column.
All right.
Hey, Cameron, thanks for hanging on. You're up on a Jay Thomas show.
See, I think something that's important. There was a paper published last week in a journal, originated in Iceland, where they traced COVID-19, and they came to the conclusion that children do not adults can transmit it to children. The statistics in the paper was overwhelming evidence that children amongst children are actually extremely safe.
Okay.
And this is actually borne out by the results of Sweden. If you take a look at the demographics, because they never did close their K through 12 schools.
Nope, they didn't.
The incidence of COVID amongst 16 and younger in Sweden is virtually zero.
We got
So, go ahead.
We got to open these schools back up, Cameron. We got to.
Well, there's no reason not to. Now that the science is proven, it's been around long enough. So at least we have a handle on demographics, handle on transmissibility, and who's going to give it to who. The children seem virtually, they don't transmit. If they get it, they don't get very sick for age bracket thing, but they don't transmit it to adults. I think it was like a 2% potential, which is you breathe, you could get something else.
Yeah.
The point being is schools are not a major source of infection nor spread, so there is absolutely no reason not to open schools back up.
Cameron, appreciate the phone call. I think a lot of people feel the way Cameron does. I know in West Fargo they did a survey, and I believe it came back. It was like 63% of the parents in there. That survey represented about 55% of the school. The schools in West Fargo, the parents, 63% said, "Yeah, let's get these schools open back."
Well, again, it's so important because yes, obviously coronavirus. There's a very serious public health risk there, and I think even Cameron is understating the potential for kids to spread it. And I say that as somebody who wants to open up the schools, but you also got to look at the other side of the equation. What does it cost us to have these schools shut down? I mean, there's the impact on the kids first and foremost. These kids need to be in school socializing. These kids need face-to-face instruction. Also, the burden on parents. A lot of parents are not set up at home to all of a sudden be doing homeschool. I know many parents homeschool. That's a choice that they make. They have the time and the resources and the expertise to do that. Not everybody is in that position. This is a huge consequential.
How tough was it for you, Rob? Rob, how tough was it for you?
It was. I work from home, so I'm used to working from home. I have an office set up. I like to think I'm a pretty intelligent person. I write about education policy. I mean, it's not like I'm, I'm very technologically savvy, right? I mean, I'm talking to you over an internet connection. I mean, I do this stuff all the time. It was hard for me, and the hardest part of it was, first of all, there's just a parent-child dynamic where sometimes kids listen better to a third party than they do mom and dad.
Yeah, it's mom and dad. Oh, come on, it's dad, it's mom.
Right. It was hard. It was hard to get her to focus. But honestly, I think the biggest struggle we faced was she was not seeing her friends. My daughter. And listen, every kid's different.
The kids need social interaction.
My daughter missed her friends. She needed
I
to be able
bet.
to go to school and see her friends. I mean, she has a phone, and we expanded her internet time.
not
and so
the
we're
same.
but it's not the same thing. So it was a real struggle, and also, and I would assume that if we did total at home schooling, we're probably going to be better than the sort of ad hoc systems they threw up. But
as you progress, yes.
But even so, I mean, and I'm not being critical of our teachers because, gosh, how could they possibly be prepared for this? But I mean, the grading. I mean, we're doing assignments and we're turning in assignments. We finished the school year with some assignments still not graded, Jay. It was so difficult. At least where I was trying to tell what was turned in, what was graded. Did we do good on that assignment? Did we do bad on that assignment? And I'm doing all this while simultaneously trying to work.
And I heard rumor, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard rumors, Rob, that you absolutely failed as the lunch lady. You were just horrible at it.
I was a bad lunch lady. Yeah, well,
you were a terrible lunch lady.
The turkey sandwiches weren't up to muster. I guess. Yeah, I guess not. Yeah,
didn't have the right pizza, the school pizza.
As a lunch lady, I'm a pretty good blogger and columnist, I guess.
Yeah, there you go. All right, let me take a break. You want to jump into the conversation? Love you, especially if you're a parent. If you're a parent out there listening, how do you feel about these kids going back to school? 293-9000. Do you have concerns? Rob, you put together in your piece a list of things that you think could be done. We'll kind of go through them. Some of them, I'm like, that's not a bad idea, Port. And then there's others I go, I don't know if that's going to work. Anyway, we can zip through that. But boy, as a parent, or even if you're a teacher out there, and I know teachers, I know you're afraid to call, and I get that because you don't want to get in trouble, your voice, but you can email me too. As a teacher, how do you feel about the schools opening back up? 293-9000, toll free 1-888-970-9329. Storms in the region. John Wheeler, Storm Tracker Weather Center. We'll talk to him throughout the afternoon. He'll keep you up to date. And we got some fun stuff we're going to do this afternoon as well in the program. This is the Jay Thomas Show. Don't need no stinking education.
We don't need no thought control.
Here's what I think we're going to see, Rob, when these schools open up. Of course, you're going to see the 6 feet of distancing. You're going to see a lot of hand sanitizer. Now, I know one of the ideas that you had was the kids come and go from the classrooms. You could limit mixing by making hallways in schools one way. Now, I've noticed over the weekend a couple stores here in the metro area that were doing that. Have the arrows on the floor. I noticed this weekend those were gone. They got rid of them.
Oh, did they? Okay. Well,
yeah.
I'm more thinking because obviously in schools you have very controlled times and the hallways are very, very busy.
Yeah.
And so, like when school's coming into session, when school's going out of session, in between classes. And so I was thinking, well, one way is maybe teachers change classes. There's a lot fewer teachers than there are students.
Yeah.
Maybe assign students to a classroom and then the teachers switch out. And then you have fewer interactions in the hallway that way. I think really trying to limit students, maybe they're gonna go to school, they're gonna get some exposure. But we can limit that exposure to cohorts. So maybe say, they're just going to be in a classroom or just kids in their grade. Maybe they'll show up to school at the same time. They go into their classrooms. You could stagger arrival times at schools, stagger dismissal times at school. You could even stagger the first day of school to try to cut down on a lot of those crowds and interactions. And maybe this isn't possible for every school. I'm not saying these are hard and fast rules. These are just ideas for things we could do.
Spitballing.
Where we could have school and not have maybe the level of personal interaction or personal mixing that we would typically see when things are normal.
Here's where I see the problem, and these are actually some pretty good ideas.
Sure.
Have the teachers instead of the bell rings, all the kids load the hallways, go to the next class. Bell rings, the teachers move from classroom to classroom. The staggering times. Here's the problem we run into. Kids are kids.
Right.
And you can have all these rules, and these kids, they want to socialize. They want to be with their friends. And it is going to be really hard to have these kids social distance an entire school day. And let's be honest, once these kids get home from school, and we're seeing it now, They're out in droves with their buddies in the neighborhood, the parks. I see it every weekend. I see it every night. We got a couple parks by our house, and these kids aren't social distancing. They're out there playing.
So here in North Dakota, I mean, the grocery stores have been open, the daycares have been open. I mean, and hey, I mean, you talk about kids not obeying the rules.
Adults aren't either.
Adults aren't either. You were talking. We have in fact, our local Walmart had the one-way aisles thing. And I was there the other day. I didn't even realize I was supposed to be doing that. So I got to one of the end caps and saw the sign and was like, "Oh, wait a minute."
Nobody realized that a couple weeks ago.
Nobody was doing it. So
no,
I don't know. I think that's a problem anyway. The whole point of this though isn't to try to achieve perfect uniform conformity with all of this. What you want to do is reduce the number of interactions in a day. So if in a normal day you come into close contact with 200 people, maybe we implement some of these things. Maybe you don't follow them all exactly, but if we cut that in half, well, gosh, we can really slow the spread of the virus. And that's been the goal all along is to try to, because we're not going to, I mean, the point at which everybody's going to avoid this and then eventually it's just going to go away, I think that ship has sailed. I think right now it's just slowing the spread as much as possible.
And I think a lot of people, I just think that when it comes to the whole Rona thing, that they're fed up, Rob. They're done with it. They are just going on with their lives, and I'll tell you why that is. Because the goalposts are changing. The scientists are arguing back and forth. The doctors are arguing back and forth. We're told one thing one day, then we're told something else another day. You have the mainstream media out there just pumping absolute fear into people. And people have they've had enough. They're like, I need to get on with my life. And I think that's what people are doing. For example, look what happened. Look what happened out in Dickinson last Thursday that made national news. You got they do their, what is it, first on first or whatever. I mean, hundreds, if not thousands of people show up. Nobody's wearing masks. Great White isn't wearing masks. And now Great White, they go out and why they did this is beyond me. They go out and make a statement, basically, we're sorry for doing this. No. The people made a choice to go to that. Now it'll be interesting to see what happens in Stark County because Stark County had 98 cases, 3 deaths total. We'll see if there's a big – because that was Thursday. We'll see if there's a big spike out there
It will probably take a week or so to see that.
Yeah.
Part of the problem, too, is the whiplash. Remember, we had the Black Lives Matter protests in the middle of all of this.
Nobody said boo about it.
So the public – and I would just – there's this great New York Times article on July 6th about this. Headline was, "Are protests dangerous? What experts say may depend on who's protesting what." And they go through and they're talking to these epidemiologists who are flat out admitting we had political bias when we talked about this. We were all against the people who were protesting the shutdowns, who frankly, let's admit it, were mostly right-wingers who were out there protesting and they wanted the lockdowns lifted and everything else. They said, we were talking about how they were putting people in danger. But then all of a sudden, the epidemiologists are talking about how they personally went to Black Lives Matter protests. Listen, when you do that stuff, when you pick and choose what sort of activities are okay and which aren't, you undermine the public's confidence in what you're saying. Because now all of a sudden, it just starts to feel like it's political. Like it's everything's filtered through whatever you want, and it's not really about public health at all. If it was about public health, then you shouldn't have had the Black Lives Matter protests. You shouldn't have supported those. You shouldn't have supported any of them if it was really about public health. But when you start picking and choosing, this is allowed, but this isn't allowed, why should the public trust you? And that, to me, that was so damaging to our ability to try to chart a course through this. So Jay, I mean, when it comes to opening schools, and you think about all the Karens, for lack of a better word, out there. Do you want to be a superintendent or a school board or a principal or something in charge of trying to make this decision? It's
going to be a nightmare.
I feel terrible for these educators because, you know what? I think North Dakota's educators, they're good people, and they're going to try to do the right thing. And I think they're going to try their darndest to find a way to hold school this year. I really do. Because
there he goes.
There he goes.
We lost you there for about a 30-second stretch there, buddy.
Oh, sorry. Well, I was saying I think North Dakota's educators are good people. And I think what they're going to do is they're going to try to find a way to get kids in school this year. Absolutely.
But this is a no-win situation. You know it is.
No, because no matter what, there's going to be a faction that says, you're out there. And I'm getting my column today where I'm just saying, I literally said in the column, hey, if we can't open the schools, then we're going to just have to make do with internet. But we need our entire policy.
These kids
debate,
need to be in school.
Our entire policy debate needs to be focused on how do we get the kids back in school. That's what we need to be focused on trying to achieve, trying to find a safe way to do that. And people are accusing me of being a domestic terrorist, of just wanting children to die, and all this. It's unbelievable.
Again, everything turns into politics. The mask thing is politics. The pandemic is politics. Going back to school is politics. You're right, and people are they're ruthless. I mean, it's like, yeah, well, you're a domestic terrorist, Rob. If you think these kids should go back to school, shame on you. Kids' lives don't matter now. I mean, that is a cheap ass argument.
I have a daughter.
It really is.
I have a daughter.
Kids die from the flu.
Yeah.
Okay. We don't stop school. I mean, these kids need to be there. The mental health of these kids. And we talk about how kids are in this day and age deal with a lot more stress and mental health. This is not good for their mental health, and not to mention, there's another issue out there. Domestic violence in the wake of COVID is on the rise because people are stuck at home with each other. And how many kids, God forbid, they go to school. There's teachers there. There's resources. There's somebody there. If something's happening at home, they can talk to or go to. That option's off the table right now.
Most kids are in good homes with good parents, but unfortunately, some kids are not. And because public school is compulsory, right? You have to send your kids to school or you have to homeschool. And even homeschooling, by the way, has oversight over it.
It does.
That has become sort of a default filtering mechanism where we can detect if kids are having problems at home, right? I mean, that's kind of a clearinghouse where the kids show up, and maybe they don't have good clothes, maybe it's clear they're not eating well, maybe it's clear they're being abused in some way. We can detect that. If the kids aren't going to schools, we can't.
That oversight's gone. That's right. That's gone.
So there's a lot of kids who are stuck at home who don't have any way of telling the outside world, hey, there's a problem. So that's one facet of this, and also just the fact that kids are not going to get as good an education over the internet as they would in school. They're just not.
No, they're not. Now, social distancing, that is going to be tough to do at schools too. Because again, kids are kids. They socialize.
Also, some of these schools just may not have the room to social.
Well,
I mean, you start saying, well, let's put every desk 6 feet apart. Okay, well, you're putting 20, 25 kids in a schoolroom. How are you going to get all their desks 6 feet apart?
Well, and I brought that up with, I can't remember if it was Robin or if it was with Kirsten when I had her on, brought up that. So how are you going to social distance these classrooms? What are you going to do to all these kids?
Well, let's also not forget administrators, teachers, everyone else that's in the building with these kids. That's one of my biggest concerns, too, going back. If you open up these schools, my wife is a teacher. She's going to have to be in a classroom with all these kids, in this school with all these other people. And
is your wife afraid about going back?
She would, if she had the choice today. They just actually sent out surveys.
I saw that, yeah.
And if she had the choice today, they'd open with distant learning. That's what she said.
With distant learning. So what we did in the spring.
Yep. Because she doesn't feel like it's time to go back and open things up widely again. Because
well, see, no, that's another question that comes up too. Okay, if somebody like Kyle's wife or other teachers, or you have parents that just don't feel comfortable with their kids going into school, how's the school going to handle that?
I don't know.
See, what if you get half your staff that gets sick? Are you going to just half your staff is going to be covered by subs? Are you going to combine classrooms? What's going to happen?
Yeah.
Well, those are stuff
fair
that
questions.
needs to be worked out, and this is stuff that needs to be worked out now.
Yeah.
I mean, school starting is coming up fast. I mean, we're already
like
in the middle of July.
Like a month.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things to work out. Hey, Rob, can you hang on?
Absolutely.
Because there's a couple other issues here that are coming up. There's another concern, and I don't know if you caught this or not, Rob, but there's a concern. A lot of these kids get bused to school, and there's a concern about having all these kids on the buses.
Yeah.
That's coming.
How do you social distance on a school bus?
Exactly. And you have youth sports coming up, and there's plans in place for that. But like that, I look at that and go, How are you going to stop these kids from high-fiving each other? I mean, come on.
How do you
You're not.
social
It's like
distance
telling
while-
baseball players not to spit.
Yeah,
How do you social distance while playing basketball or football?
That's right.
I mean, you can't
Kyle,
you can't tackle somebody while you're social distancing.
that's a good question. Is there going to be high school football?
I doubt it.
And to me,
Kyle, you're convinced there's not even going to be NFL this year.
I don't think there'll be NFL this year at all. Look at Division One FBS. I mean, they're
Bison Oregon's
getting
done.
slimmer and slimmer and slimmer. So I just don't see an NFL season happening.
Just let them go out there and beat the hell out of
and
each
again,
other.
sport, and to me, school sports are so far down the list of priorities. We got to educate these kids first and foremost. That's priority number one.
These kids need an education. You're exactly right. But also, when it comes to high school sports, that's a big part of small town North Dakota, small town Minnesota. It really is.
Yeah, it is.
And how they're going to do this, I'll read some of the ideas that they have put in place, but there's so much to about this going back to school. But again, at the end of the day, you got to open the schools up. These kids cannot sit home.
At the end of the day, we have to make a decision.
6 months.
We're never going to have a consensus on this. At some point, somebody's just going to have to decide, and we're going to have to try something.
Yep. It's going to be interesting what the governor has to say come tomorrow. All right, hang on, Rob. 2:34, we got weather in the region. John Wheeler's in the Storm Tracker Weather Center with his crew. We'll get you the latest on that. Looks like we should get some stuff rolling through the metro area here sometime after 3. All right, we got news on the way as well. This is the Jay Thomas Show. Opening. How they're going to do it.
Would you drag around my door? If I keep it cracked, there won't be there no more.
Rob Port, we hook up with him every Monday.
Would you leave along the way?
And the PC did today, gaining a lot of traction. As a matter of fact, it's titled, "We Must Do Everything We Can to Send Kids Back to School This Fall." I think we all agree, or most of us agree on that. I know there's some concerns. Now, a couple things, Rob. Number one, I don't know if you caught this or not. There was this came out like 3 days ago. The University of Vermont, the doctors did a not a survey, but they did a study, I guess you would call it. It was published in the Journal of Pediatrics, and it says, look, the children infrequently transmit COVID-19 to each other or to adults. And they're arguing why the school should be open, but they went through and studied, did a recent study. A recent study was done in China. Contract tracing demonstrated of the 68 children with COVID-19 admitted to the Children's Hospital from January 20th to February 27th. 96% were household contacts of previously infected adults, and there was a French study done. And that exposed over 80 classmates at 3 schools to the disease. None contracted it. It's a pretty interesting piece that these professors, doctors put together.
It is, and I've seen people touting it, kind of case closed, open the schools. The only problem with that is operating a school takes a lot of adults too.
It does,
and those adults are going to have to come in contact. I mean, and not just teachers. Administrators. You have all the people who aren't even in the classroom. I mean, cleaning crews, maintenance crews. Security personnel. Yep. I mean, it's it takes a lot of adults to run a school. So I don't think we can ignore that part.
293-9000 toll free 1-888-970-9329 if you want to weigh in on our discussion, how you feel about schools opening, how they should do it. And again, I go back. It is going to be really tough to have these kids follow these social distancing guidelines, if that's the route the schools are going to go down in our neck of the woods. And they are. We know they are. And if these kids don't, what are you going to do? You're going to punish these kids because they high-fived or they were standing too close to a classmate? You got the same thing for youth sports. Let's see. Alex Sumner, Fargo Youth Baseball CEO president. We want to keep the sportsmanship in place. Typically, there's a handshake, he says, for sportsmanship. Each team now will have to go to their respective line, and they clap, do a round of applause for the other teams, or tip their hats, just saying a good job. They got to keep players 6 feet apart. It's also recommended teams limit the number of kids, only allowing small groups. It's just this is going to be tough to do. And again, what do you do? Punish these kids if they don't they don't follow up? I mean, come on.
And that's the same dilemma we have with masks too. I mean, it's gonna. I think most people are going to try their best to not be irresponsible. Some people out there are going to forget. Some people out there are going to be jerks. It's too much to try to enforce. I mean, there's only so far, and that's why this whole time, choice is always better than force. We want people to try to choose to do the best. And back to the schools issue, again, I don't think we could just give up on the school year. And maybe we need to start with distance learning and ease into in-person. I don't know how to do it. I'm open to the debate. What I don't want to see us do is just give up and write this school year off. Yes, there are risks from coronavirus, but there are a huge amount of risks for having these kids not going to school, not being in the classroom. We need to be aware of those risks as well.
All right. Callers, hang on. Kyle's getting you as fast as he can. Now, go back to the mask thing. You have the doctors and the scientists that say, this is a no-brainer. Put the masks on. It's going to stop it. You have others that are saying, no, these do not work. There's a dentist, I believe his name's Rancourt, a doctor that came out here a couple weeks back. I said, look, these masks do not work. And it's because the what do you call them, the particulars or whatever, particulates of COVID, they're just too fine. These masks do not stop this. The only thing that works is an N95 mask. And they don't want the public buying those up because the healthcare folks need them. Now, there was another gentleman. I tried to get him on the program today, Rob, but he's so backed up. He's the former epidermatologist for the state of Minnesota, now works at the University of Minnesota. And same thing, he's saying, look, these masks are not doing anything. They're a false sense of security. They're not stopping. And he said the same thing. The only thing that's going to work are N95 masks. Otherwise, the cloth masks or these paper masks you see people wearing, he said they don't do anything. His daughter is a surgeon or a doctor. He told her the same thing. These masks aren't working. They're not doing it. So, and that's what gets people confused, too. You hear one thing, then you hear another thing. And the fact that it's just being forced on you by the government in some cases, just going to make people back away from it.
I think with the mask thing, and I don't normally buy into this because it's sort of a variation on have you ever heard of Pascal's wager? It was this philosophical debate about whether or not God exists, and the argument was, you should live your life like God exists, whether he exists or not, because if you do that, then at the end, and God does exist, then you'll go to heaven. And obviously the argument to that is, well, what if the Christian God's not really the God? Anyway, there's a whole thing. I don't normally buy into that argument because you could deploy it everywhere. Well, even if the mask, but in this situation, why not just wear the mask? It could help. And what does it really cost you?
Okay, now I can argue that. Hang on, Dave, and I think it's Lidgerton. You're coming up. Hold on, Dave. You're right. It could help you, and it could hurt you because now you're having the problem where people are now showing up at hospitals with bacterial lung infections. Your body is meant to get rid, to exhaust out
is that
the
really,
nasties.
I mean,
yes,
there's lots of people. I mean, scientists who work in labs wear those masks.
Bacteria.
All day. Surgeons,
they don't wear them, but they don't wear them all day long.
Surgeons wear them. Sometimes they'll be in surgery for like 12, 15 hours.
You're right, Rob. Sometimes. But I mean, a prime example, I won't say what store I was in, but a very, very popular store here.
Or if you do it correctly and wash your masks like you're supposed to, then it won't be a problem.
Now, like I said last week, I think 95% of the people wearing masks are not even doing it correctly. But if you have that mask on and you're working an 8-hour shift and maybe you get a 15-minute break here and there, but in the meantime, you have to have that thing on all day long. That cannot be good for you. It can't.
My daughter's doing it now. My daughter works in my oldest daughter works in a assisted living facility. She wears her mask all day.
And she's got to, at the end of the day, just go, thank God I got this thing off.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's not fun.
You watch people fidget with these things or they're pull them down and not cover up their nose because they can't flip and breathe in them. Let's see. Dave's in Lidgerton. Dave, you're up on a Jay Thomas show.
Well, I'm for masks.
Okay.
But I definitely think schools should be back in. And I think it should be a case-by-case basis. If that teacher feels threatened, that teacher should be able to ask the students, wear the mask during my math class, please, and then take it off when you leave. Kids aren't social distancing. I have children right now, and our kids are enjoying time with one another because they needed it.
It is. I've got to believe, Dave, Rob, that when these school districts decide a plan, and they need to come up with it like now, so parents know, so teachers know what's going on. I think, Dave, you're going to see a lot of wiggle room. I think you're going to see those options where, hey, if a teacher does not feel comfortable, then that teacher is going to be able to say, look, in my class, but then you're going to have parents go, well, my kid, it's not good for my kid to wear a mask. You're going to have that debate. But I think, Dave, for the most part, you're going to see the teachers and the parents have a lot of options.
And,
Yes,
by the way,
everyone
one
will
of
figure it out. But at the end of the day, I think we should try it.
One of those
I think
options
we
should
send them back to school and back off of there.
Yep, give it a shot. Exactly.
And,
right,
and Jay, I'm 100% on board if we could figure out an option so that parents will say, you know what, it's too risky, or hey, my kids had some lung issues or whatever, that we have an option where they could stay home and get at home schooling as well. I feel,
and we'll be better at it this time around. Yeah, distance learning was no fun, but this is 5 months later, and we're starting to figure a little of that out too.
I feel like we could facilitate a lot of options here and a lot of flexibility. If you're a school district in a part of the state that hasn't seen a case of coronavirus yet, I don't know that it makes a lot of sense for you to be shut down. You probably should. Let those kids go back to school. Let those kids try to have as much normal as they can have. If you're in a place where they're, like a Burleigh County or a Cass County where you've seen a lot of cases, okay, well, the answer probably needs to be different there. But you're right, Jay. We need a lot of flexibility here.
Jay, appreciate the phone call out to Valley City. Aaron, you're up on a Jay Thomas Show.
Hey, Jay.
Hey.
My wife's a registered nurse, and she has to wear a mask all day long. And she says, and she works 12-hour shifts.
Oh.
And by hour 10, she says she's fuzzy. She can't even concentrate. She's absolutely against it. Being in a medical profession, I guess it's a pretty awful thing to say, but
yeah. Well,
she can't handle it.
Yeah, I just can't believe wearing a mask that long, day in and day out, is going to be healthy for you. Now, granted, yeah, you get a break here and there, but the point is, if you're having to wear this thing for hours on end and you're breathing in your own exhaust, that's not going to be good for a body. Matter of fact, Aaron and Rob and listener, just one of many emails coming in. This comes from a gal who says, I have asthma, and I have just been diagnosed with the worst lung infection I have ever had. I can hardly breathe. It is not COVID. It is asthma, and I was told it was due to wearing my mask.
Oh, wow.
So I just...
And I'm all for. If I have to go into a store and they mandate it, I put it on.
Yeah,
it doesn't bug one bit.
Yeah, I don't like the fact that now Menards is saying I have to wear a mask, but it's their business. If that's what they want to do, I'm not going to be boycott Menards. No, it's like if I need to go in there, I'll toss a mask on. I got to go for my yearly physical next week. I'm going to have to wear a mask. I asked this morning. I said, yes, Jay, you're going to have to wear a mask in here. And she said, as much as you complain about it on the radio, you're going to have to wear a mask in here. I said, no, that's fine. But I'm not going to walk around wear one if I don't have to. Aaron,
at least you're reasonable about it when you have to
thanks,
wear
buddy.
one.
Yeah, if I got to wear one, I got to. But like if the governor were to mandate it, I don't think so. Not happening. And I don't see Governor Burgum-Rob doing that. Minnesota, whole different story.
Not only do I think Governor Burgum wouldn't do it, I don't think it's necessary. And also, I think, again, when you get to that point, you're already losing. You've already lost. If you have to put in place a law forcing people to do something like this, you've already lost.
You're behind the eight ball. Hey, what's up on the next Plain Talk podcast, the world famous?
I'm gonna work on this education issue a little bit more, see if we can get some leaders on to talk about, how can we reopen these schools? How can we make a good policy that works for the maximum number of people?
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Mr. Port.
Thank you.
News coming up next and more of the Jay Thomas Show.